Go ahead.
So, inshallah, we'll continue with the verse number 56, right? Surah Al-Imran, verse 56. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فأما الذين كفروا فأعذبهم عذابا شديدا في الدنيا والآخرة وما لهم من ناصرين. Okay, so here the translation of this verse: as for those who disbelieve, I shall punish them a severe punishment in this world and in the hereafter, and for them there are no helpers. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong surah. Yes, it's Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa 56, sorry about that. Okay, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الذين كفروا بآياتنا سوف نصليهم نارا كلما نضجت جلودهم بدلناهم جلود غيرها ليذوقوا العذاب إن الله كان عزيزا حكيما. Okay, so this verse number 56 that we just correctly read from Surah An-Nisa, those who have disbelieved in our verses, we shall certainly make them enter a fire. Whenever their skins are burnt out, we shall give them other skins in their place so that they may taste the punishment. Now remember in the previous verse, it says, وَكَفَى بِجَهَنَّمَ سَعِيرًا, right? That Jahannam, the Nar, is a sufficient place to burn, basically, right? If you look at the translation of that, enough for them is Jahannam, a fire that's ablaze. The import of Sa'ira is a fire that's blazing. So it has the imagery of like a ferocious, angry fire, Sa'ira. So this, I want to actually pause on this for a little bit. Now, we've been told that the fire of hell is 70 times worse than the fire of this world, right? This is an approximation that we've been given. But, if you think about it, it's very, overwhelming to try to imagine this. We don't have the temperature of the fire of hell, right? It's something that, subhanAllah, it's beyond, beyond human knowledge. We can't even, very hard to understand that level of heat altogether. And no one wants to think about it, especially nowadays in the summer months, summer fasting. But the purpose of the fire is mentioned so many times in the Quran in various places over and over again. Just like Jannah is mentioned, right? You also have the fire of hell mentioned with its various descriptions, and it has various names, various synonyms for Jahannam or Nar or Sa'ir. And the purpose is to terrify us, right? That is actually the point. In hopes that fear will bear some fruit. It will not just be an emotional fear, but something that translates, is powerful enough to translate to our practical lives, not just emotionally affect us. So one way, so I was very curious, this is a morbid research that I couldn't tell her, but I really wanted to see the effect of fire and heat on the human body. So if you think about it, the closest we can probably get to this is in two ways actually. One is if you look at what happens to a person in heat stroke. The other is what happens to a person when they suffer any type of physical burn on their body. Now normally we maintain a body temperature of 98.6, right? And it's amazing to know how most of the body's energy just goes towards maintaining body temperature. That's how important it is. The overwhelming majority of our calories that we consume on a daily basis are they go towards homeostasis, to maintaining the temperature of the body. Because look what happens if it goes up just by a few degrees. I'm going to walk you through what happens with rises by degrees in the body, like what physically it kind of goes through. So let's say someone has a fever, right? This is something that athletes actually experience. Athletes that are obviously have high levels of endurance, and they obviously their bodies are because when they train or when they perform, their body temperature normally rises, right? So they have a greater tolerance for increased body temperature than the average person, right? But let's say once you reach 104 degrees, what physically starts to happen. Okay, physically at 104 degrees, your body begins to suffer from what are called heat cramps. This was the new term for me. I didn't know about this. 104 degrees, your body begins to suffer heat cramps that are believed to be the result of sweating out so and so. The only mechanism the body has to deal with an elevated outer temperature is to, because of which now its own body temperature is raised. When we say 104 degrees, it's the body temperature. So here now, your body is trying its best to prevent basically burning out. So the temperature of your blood with the germ core also begins to rise, right? And blood pressure begins to decrease, and your vision starts to turn fuzzy. Someone who's experiencing this level of elevated body temperature. At 105 degrees, you begin to hallucinate. And actually, I know someone who just went through this recently. It was a child, it was a very young child, and they were so sick for so long, including having a fever. And they were asking their parent, why do I see this on the wall? Why are there grapes and horses on the wall? Mom was very scared. So at 104 degrees, you actually do begin to hallucinate, and then there's extreme pain going through the body, and everything now turns black. This is at 105. 106, of course, is the threshold for heat stroke. 106, you have passed out, and you are already under a heat stroke, and now the metabolic rate is going, just has accelerated beyond anything that is safe for the human body. So it's actually occurring more than 50% more than its normal rates. So what does that mean? It means your body literally needs to cook from within. This is what happens. At 107, of course, you're going to be vomiting. You're unconscious anyway. 109, seizure takes over your body. 109 degrees, seizures completely ripple through the muscles in your body. 110 to 113 degrees, all cellular proteins inside of you begin to dissolve. And the body, the heart, and the lungs start to hemorrhage. Massive internal bleeding. Heat damages your liver, your kidneys, your brain, your intestinal wall. You have toxins now emitted throughout your entire bloodstream, which of course leads to septic shock and your heart stop. This is only 113 degrees. This can start as early as 110. But how far is that from our normal body temperature? Less than 5 degrees. This was terrifying, which is why I just kind of had to see what happens to the body with the effect of heat. And imagine if that, this is just a dunya heat stroke. Obviously this is dunya research, right? This is a dunya heat stroke. And if you look at the verse where it says, كُلَّمَا نَضِجَتْ جُلُودُهُمْ بَدَّلْنَاهُمْ جُلُودًا غَيْرَهَا. Every time their skins are burnt out, we shall replace the new skins in their place. I apologize if this is the first time that you're attending my class. I normally don't intend to scare you to death, but this is just the verse that came up. So here, verse 50 says, this really points out the horror of skin replacement. And there's a hadith of a narration from Mu'adh, one of the companions of the Prophet. He says that actually the skin replacement, because time in Akhirah is at a completely different dimension from time in this world. So we can't imagine how much can happen within what we consider a moment. In the Akhirah, according to the report of Mu'adh and he says that skin replacement will happen multiple times within a single moment. Now, what does this imply? Number one, it implies the intensity of the burning. Because the burning is so intense that the skin is, being burned out completely within, an unquantifiable rate. That's how quickly it's going. We can't even quantify it. And I also looked up the temperature at which human skin would begin to melt. Like what I first described was a heat stroke. That's when the body, your internal body temperature rises, so that you go from 90 to 113 and you're done. But for the external temperature, for that, not your body temperature, what external temperature do you have to be in? Most of to protect this for your skin to actually start melting, 162 degrees Fahrenheit. At 162 degrees Fahrenheit, your skin begins to melt, literally. And I didn't even look which is obviously beyond, way beyond this, right? Because that's still a creation of Allah in the dunya. So I don't want to compare to what, the fire of hell was for you. But at 162 degrees Fahrenheit, your skin literally will begin to melt, like ice melts like in the sun. And this reminds me of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, how being dipped into the fire of hell once, just like one dip, will erase an entire lifetime of memories of pleasure and happiness. You know the hadith, right? You know the hadith, the person who had the easiest life, the best life. I'll share the hadith with the authority of Anas, who says that the Prophet ﷺ says, يُؤْتَى بِأَنْعَمِ أَهْلِ الدُّنْيَا مِنْ أَهْلِ النَّارِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَيُسْقَطُ فِي النَّارِ سَوْوًا ثُمَّ يُقَالِ ابْنَ آدَمَ هَلْ رَأَيْتَ خَيْرًا قَطْ. So this is the Prophet ﷺ saying that the most blessed, the most perhaps wealthiest, the blessed, the person who is in the greatest blessings of Allah's Ta'ala in this world, he will be dipped on the way into the fire of hell once, just once, one dip out. It's not like he stayed there. And he'll be asked, have you ever seen any khayr, any goodness in his narration? And he says, has any khayr or delight ever passed by you? وَيَقُولُ لَا وَاللَّهِ يَا رَبِّي. Swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what intense the experience will be. That I have never seen any khayr. I've never seen any good. I've never seen any blessing. I've never delighted in anything. And this is the person who is the most blessed person in the life of this world. So what does that mean? It means being dipped into the fire of hell for a moment erases a lifetime of pleasure. That's what that means, right? This is why sin is the most unworthy thing we can pursue. Pleasure is fleeting, yet its punishment is lasting. It's one of the most unworthy things that we can pursue. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the African worker who used to work near vats of sulfuric acid. And sulfuric acid is one of the most caustic forms of acid that there is. One day he fell into the vat. This was an open, I don't know what kind of safety condition they had. It was an open vat. So he fell in. Of course, the reason I mentioned this is because it reminded me of that symbol, that dip. Because as soon as he fell in, he came out. As soon as he fell in, he realized, obviously he knows what this acid is, what it can do. So as soon as he fell in, he came out immediately, but he was covered with acid, which immediately incited chemical burn. And you cannot even imagine the pain that he was in. There was actually a physician who reported, kind of explains the experience that he went through. He was obviously, the man was running. His co-workers were trying to catch up to him, help him, but his skin began to dissolve in front of their eyes. Like the skin, the muscles, the tissues were falling from the bones. Within minutes, you can look this up if you want. This is the case of the African worker who fell in a vat of sulfuric acid. Within minutes, the tissues were falling off from the bones and the organs. He burned. This is a chemical burn. He burned to death. It just went through his skin, cauterizing the blood vessels, eating, to the organs. The pain was intolerable. The damage irreversible from one dip of right? This sulfuric acid. So subhanAllah, would just one dip in the fire of hell? This is why one dip in the fire of hell erases, anything good that you could have experienced or did experience in the life of this world. So this is the first thing that we learned from the narration of God, which is that the skin replacement will be multiple times per moment. The first thing that this tells you is the intensity of the burn. All the details we've given so far is to highlight the intensity of the burn. Number two, what the verse underlines is that regardless of the intensity, although it is as intense as it is, skin replacement is provided at a proportional rate. It's not that because the punishment is so intense and the skin is being burned down so rapidly that the rate of replacement is decreased. The rate of replacement is proportional to the burden. This is how you have multiple replacements per moment. And the third point that we extract from this is that the experience of punishment is never lessened. It's not like you have this horrible punishment, which is once is enough for a lifetime, right? But and it can kill the person. person that they couldn't bear it. It's something beyond human, capacities there. So he just died. But that was the easy way out compared to what happens to the people in Surah. The nature of Jahannam is constant, unrelenting torture in terms of rate as well as intensity. And I was thinking about the African worker, how he didn't go through it over and over again. Right? It's not like he had to experience it multiple times. He just experienced it once and he died. Right? Once was intense enough to end his mortal life, but in the akhirah, because death itself will be given death. The famous narration of the Day of Judgment, death itself will be slaughtered. So there will be no more death. So immortality adds to the adab of Ahlul of the people of the fire, because it makes it a repetitive experience. Just like immortality is a blessing for the people of Jannah. That's one of the blessings of Jannah, right? Na'im al-Muqim, right? It's because they have become immortal, because death has been slaughtered. So just like immortality is one of the greatest blessings for people of Jannah, it is also the greatest adab for the people of the fire, who will actually call out for death over and over. This will be like the greatest wish. The greatest wish in Jahannam will be death, but they will not be given death. So Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah, he writes, it is a never-ending scene placed before our own eyes and repeated time after time. We're talking about the punishment here. When the scene is portrayed, its continuous repetition is actually expressed in kullama. Kullama yani every time. There's in our screens are burned out, they're going to be replaced. And this, he says, are the effects of fear, and are emphasized and perpetuated a recompense for disbelief, because it is said that every time they were called to believe, they were repeatedly rejected. That this was their reaction to the guidance, to the calling of the messengers of Allah, to whenever they were called to khayr, to tawheed, etc. It was repeated rejection over and over. And so the punishment is of the same nature, that it is repetitive. And subhanAllah, look at how the verse ends. It says, Inna Allah kana azizan hakim. Why these two sifat or attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why are these should give at the end of this verse? Because there's no word in the Quran except that it was the best word for that place, right? It's not that another sifat could have been added and that would have been better. That's not possible. Every word is there because there's a hikmah, perfect completion to those sifat rather than some of those sifat. So here the sifat of Allah that are mentioned is that in Allah kana aziz and hakim, right? That he was aziz. So this is actually aziz and strong mind. What strikes awe in a person with this verse, that regardless of how intense the torment is, how difficult it is to listen to imagine, in your mind, it's based on Allah's hikmah. In Allah, hikmah. He is strong, wise, and able to punish, most capable of punishing, mighty, but he is also hakim. So this punishment, which is unbearable, is also brought in his deeds. Just as there is full wisdom in everything that he created, and he commands it, there is also full wisdom in how he rewards, and also in how he punishes. Yeah, this punishment has not departed in the least an iota's worth, an atom's worth from justice. It has not departed in the least from wisdom. This is what makes it so scary, because it shows how it is truly deserved, how it has been truly earned, how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how painful it was for him when people were being called by the Prophet and they were rejecting it. This is why when we try to understand why aren't oppressors punished immediately, or like what's happening in Syria, and so hard to think about why is it that he's not being punished immediately, these oppressors? Because Allah knows what's in store for them. Right? To him, there's no past, present, future. It's all one. Everything is in his immediate knowledge. He knows how close the punishment is, how intense the punishment is for the oppressor. And he sees how near the reward is for the oppressed. So because it's so relative, Allah doesn't hasten, right? He gives actually, if you look at Surah Al-Imran, إِنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِثْمًا. That in fact we extend their respite so that they can increase their sins. This is for someone, of course, who has rejected God, Allah, and rebellion against Allah. So they're actually, their respite is not a delay or that Allah is not displeased with them. It's that in fact so that they can perfect the decree of punishment and all that on themselves. There's actually a narration of Hassan al-Basri, he says about what's going to happen to these people. تأكل النار كل يوم 70,000 مرة كلما أكلتهم عودوا فيعودون كما كانوا. The fire will eat them up every day 70,000 times. When it would have eaten them, they would be commanded, return, so they shall return to be as they were. Now, we can't imagine this happening once or twice, let alone 70,000 times. But again, the time frame is completely different. And after, right? If in a moment it happens multiple times, and obviously within a day it can happen. And this is a whole, it's attributed to Hassan al-Basri. This is not attributed to Hassan al-Basri. And, just to get an idea of this punishment, we know the least punished person in the fire of hell, right? It's the person whose brain is boiling, right? Because of, this is the least punishment, right? Lightest among the people of the fire, the person whose soul and their feet, there will be 2 embers, right? And from just from the heat of those embers, the fire, the brain is going to boil like water on a pot. Now, if you look at the next, Allah is going to protect us from the fire, and this is actually the dua that we make every morning and evening, after Fajr and after Maghrib, to make this dua, right? 7 times. And also, since we tend to be in the kitchen, we experience burns sometimes, oven burns, stove burns, steam burns. Steam burns is probably worse than a fire burn. It's a reminder it's just no matter how hard it is or how delicious it is, sin is never worth it. No matter how hard it is to leave or how delicious it is to indulge in, it's the most unworthy thing that's a person because of what it does to you. Okay, now a huge contrasting picture in verse number 57. Huge contrast. In the next verse, verse 57, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ سَنُدْخِلُهُم جَنَّاتٍ تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا لهم فيها أزواج مطهرة وندخلهم ظلا ظليلا. As for those who have believed and have done good deeds, we shall admit them to gardens beneath which rivers flow تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها forever. Obviously, it's an eternal reward. And for them are purified spouses, and we shall enter them into ظلا ظليلا. Okay, now this verse is an intense shade. It's a shade that is extremely intense, extremely dense. So now here we have a stark contrast of ever-flowing gardens, of ever-flowing water. And the fact that they're ever-flowing, what it alludes to is the sense of elements of settlement and continuity. Okay? This is what Qutb mentions. He says that they shall abide beyond the count of time. Abiding beyond the count of time. So here there's an opposite picture of bliss and happiness, and what increases the torment of the people of the fire will actually be able to see the people of Jannah. Okay? This is actually mentioned in the Quran. The fire will actually be able to see the people of Jannah. They're going to ask for them for some of their blessings, namely water, right? But of course that will be haram on the people of the fire. They will not be able to get any blessing at all from Jannah, obviously. And what's mentioned also is لَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ, right? That they will have purified spouses. Obviously, any happiness is doubled when you have someone to share it with, right? Like the saying goes, happiness is doubled when sorrows are halved when you have someone to share it with. So there's a complete, a feeling, perfect picture of total happiness and eternal bliss. Pure spouse, and actually there's a narration of the Prophet ﷺ that the spouse in paradise will be pure. Pure from physical deficiencies that we are plagued with in this world, as well as moral deficiencies, right? Which means that there will be highest standard of akhlaq as well, the higher standard of character. And it'll be like the sweetest company to be in. It's hard to maintain sweetness with your spouse all the time, right? I mean, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So, but in Jannah it will be natural. In Jannah it will be, this will be the tabak, this will be the nature, the disposition of the people. And the women, the wives of paradise, they will be actually free from all type of human, things that normally are averse, cause aversion, like menstruation, like having the need for the bathroom, defecation, urination. The Tafsir actually mentions nasopharynx. It says they'll be free from all of those things that that just generally are cause aversion in the human being. Mujahid, he mentions he's mufassir. He and Dabai, he's one of the scholars of Dabai. He mentioned that the women there actually also be free from procreation. Right? So there's no pregnancy in Jannah, right? Unless, of course, you want to have babies. Some of us might want to have babies, right? So there's always an exception because remember there's the narration of the person who want to grow, cultivate plants in Jannah, right? So why would you want to do that? Allah already did it for you, right? But so there's the hadith shows that even if you have a wish that will seem like why would you want to have it, it will be catered to, right? So for those who want to have babies, okay. And all types of women have no purities, and any type of najasa, they'll be free from all those things. And the best thing of the women is the khuluq will be perfect, and it will be increasing beauty in Jannah. This is a really cool thing about paradise, is that every Friday there's going to be, there's a souq in paradise, right? And there will be actually horses that are presented to the believers. They're actually going to ride on it, and they return to their families. Their families will swear they will increase in beauty. Right? So in dunya, youth is considered the peak of beauty, and old age, which follows it, is just a remnant of what was once beautiful. So we should strive for a youth of increasing beauty, and that is only in Jannah. The fountain is only in Jannah, right? It doesn't exist anywhere else. So, and then the verse ended with ظِلًّا ظَلِيلًا, right? Law. This is the law, ظِلًّا ظَلِيلًا. A cool shade, a dense shade. The narration about this, a beautiful narration about the tree in paradise, right? With the tree in Jannah is like, and this is a hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. إِنَّ فِي الْجَنَّةِ لَشَجَرَةً يَسِيرُ الرَّاكِبُ فِي ظِلِّهَا 100 عَامٍ مَا يَقْطَعُهَا أَقْرَأُ إِنْ شَئْتُمْ ظِلَّ مَمْدُودٍ. Right? There's a beautiful narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that in paradise there is a tree. If a rider were to ride under its shade for 100 years, it would not be able to complete the distance. And this is how elongated the shade of that tree will be. SubhanAllah, you'll not be able to cross that shade. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, which is actually from a verse from the Quran, which means an extended shade. He said, recite if you will, it means an extended shade. And there's another interpretation of the dhil or the shade, is that it's actually the shade of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That this is actually the shade that is referred to, because that is a shade that is everlasting, obviously, the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the saqaf of al-firdaus is the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The saqaf, the ceiling of the firdaus al-ala, where is that place? Is that the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is said about the firdaus al-ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has planted the tree. He has himself planted. He has himself been decorated. Firdaus al-ala for the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us al-firdaus al-ala. So this is the shade that is referred to, any shade that will never decline. Shade whose coolness is lasting, whose effects are lasting. And just imagine the happiness of the people in paradise. It will show on their faces. The happiness of, and the flip side of the hadith that I mentioned previously is the person who will have lived in this dunya a life of misery, a life of poverty and want and oppression, and felt like the worst type of life that you can imagine. Maybe like a homeless person, maybe in Syria, put a homeless person in Syria who's lost everything, like just combine all the worst possible, even tragic situations, this person will be dipped, the Hadith says. This person is dipped into Jannah for a moment. This will erase the entire life of pain. The memory of that pain will be erased or wounded. I remember Sheikh Mukhtar saying, imagine spending an hour in Jannah, or like a day. Like imagine what would happen. A moment's dip erases a lifetime of pain. Imagine what spending greater time does. And this will show on the faces of the people of Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them for those. Okay, however, there are things we have to do to get there, right? And one of the heaviest things is mentioned in the next verse, verse number 58. Big responsibilities that have to be shouldered. And some of these are mentioned in verse 58. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ نِعَمَّ مَا يَعِظُكُم بِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. Surely Allah commands you to deliver trusts to those entitled to them, and that when you judge between people, judge with justice. Surely excellent is the exhortation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you. Surely Allah is well hearing all things. The concept of amana. Right? If you look at the word inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addu al-amanat. Okay, this is the plural of amana. Right? Amana is something that all of us are familiar with. And Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned actually this passage, from this passage, this verse and the verses that follow, all those tissues are tackled that are necessary for faith to exist in a community. In order for a community to be a Muslim community, to have emblems of Iman, to have real faith showing, the following things have to be present. And the two basic and necessary obligations that have been placed on the Muslim community as seen from these two verses is number one, the fulfillment of the trust, right? Amana. Number two is maintaining justice. Two very heavy, extremely heavy, burdensome responsibilities. The first amana, now when we look at the word amana, it's not that someone lent you a book and you have to take care of it and return it. This is like the most common way in which we think of amana, right? But actually there are many levels of amana. And this is actually alluded to in the verse because it occurs in the plural. It doesn't say amana, it says amana, which is the plural, right? Amana, that you fulfill the trusts. It's in the plural, right? So what is the first trust? The first and the foremost trust, of course, is that which Allah has implanted in our fitrah. The trust to believe in Him. The trust to submit to Him. To have iman. To accept the hadayah, the guidance that He has sent towards us. This is the first amana. And the one who disregards this as a khiyana in the most basic amana that was required. And amana in general, as once the Prophet ﷺ was giving a sermon, giving a khutbah, and in that khutbah he says, "La imana liman la amana lahu." La amana, or rather la iman liman la amana lahu, wa la dina liman la ahda lahu. Beautiful short narration has a world of meaning in it. That there is no iman in the one who has no amana. Yani the one who does not fulfill their trusts. The one who cannot be trusted with an amana, there is no iman in such a person. وَلَا دِينَ لِمَنْ لَا عَهْدَ لَهُ. And there is no deen for the person who has no ahd, breaking a covenant. The one who breaks their promises. We tend to take these things lightly. But subhanAllah, these are very big with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what we learned about the mention of the fire of hell explains to us how big they were with Allah. They thought, oh, let's just do kufr, no big deal. But now look what happened to them. And their skins and the burning and the torment, right? So this is something we should make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Allah to protect us from those sins that we consider little, but with Him are great. Because that's real trouble. That's when you are really someone among the losers, among the khasirin. So here we want to understand that it's not just how we commonly perceive amana, but it's also things like honesty in daily transactions. It also includes giving honest nasiha to people, to common people, to rulers, to everyone. Taking good care of children. This is a very scary amana also, right? Something all of us, most of us are judging fairly. And this judgment applies to common people. It's not just we think, oh, judgment has to do with the judges, those that are official judges in like courts. Yeah, of course it applies to them as well. It also applies to people in their normal daily affairs. It's a lovely narration of the Prophet ﷺ when he saw a man, his son came to him and he kissed him. And then his daughter came to him and he took her and he made her sit next to him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, why don't you treat them equally? Why don't you treat them fairly? Yani, if you kiss the son, why don't you kiss the daughter? That's what he was asking. So even to that level, because that means the child, the Prophet ﷺ is doing that, and he was an orphan, right? And he's sensitive to the feelings of the children. He understands that the daughter will have felt it, right? That my father kissed my brother, but he didn't kiss me. And this is why he's Alhamdulillah. This is why the Prophet ﷺ is mercy for all of mankind. This is why the tree wept when the Prophet ﷺ took another member, right? Because he is Rahman, mercy for all of humankind. So treating the subtle differences, the man probably didn't even notice, Arab cultures, the way they used to be, especially with their daughters before Islam. This is obviously Islamic narration after Islam. He probably didn't notice, right? But the Prophet ﷺ made it an issue of equality. Because that's the word he used. In Arabic it means it refers to equality. But why don't you treat them equally? So judging fairly is quite a challenge. And it requires lots of intelligence and attention, which is hard for a mother, a caretaker, to have at all times. Especially because children are also at varying levels of intelligence, right? Once a great Sahabi, Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu, asked the Prophet ﷺ that he be appointed as a governor for a certain location in the Islamic State. And the Prophet ﷺ, this is a beautiful companion, Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu, one of the Zuhad, one of the great ascetics, of the Ummah. And the Prophet ﷺ knew Abu Dhar and how he was very. We get the sense that leadership has certain requirements and responsibilities, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't want to burden him with those. So he told Abu Dhar, he said, Ya Abu Dhar, innaka da'if. Oh, Abu Dhar, you are weak. Wa innaha amana. And what you're asking for, it's an amana. Wa annaha yawma al-qiyamati khizyu wa nadama. And it is on the day of judgment a source of humiliation and regret. إِلَّا مَنْ أَخَذَ بِحَقِّهَا, except for the one who takes it with its right. وَأَدَّى الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ فِيهَا, and the one who fulfills that which is required of him. This is why generally the Muslims, the Sahaba, generally they would not want to be placed in positions of authority, right? It is narrated by Abu Hanifa also, right? That he was asked repeatedly to become the judge, the qadi, and he repeatedly refused. These are people who felt, right, people of true understanding, that they understand that, as the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّهَا أَمَانَةٌ وَإِنَّهَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ خِزْيٌ وَنَدَامَةٌ, right? It is a trust, and on the day of judgment it is a source of humiliation and regret, except for the one, of course, who granted its true rights, fulfills what is in it. If they do that, then another narration, remember the narration of those who are under the shade of Allah's throne on the day of judgment, of those 7 categories. One is Al-Hakim al-Adil, right? The just ruler. So it's a huge thing to be in a position of leadership and to fulfill that trust. You get rewarded with the shade of Allah's throne on the day of judgment. So generally that's what it is, but if you fulfill its rights, then it is greatly rewarded. So a sign of nifaq, hypocrisy, is to waste the amana, to khiyana al-amana. This is a sign of nifaq. Khiyana yani wasting the amana, not fulfilling it, not taking care of it. And this is where I look at the next part. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah ni'amma ya'idukum bih. What an excellent counsel indeed Allah is giving you. What excellent advice. What excellent counsel, exhortation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you. And you really understand the excellence of it when you go into the tafsir. We read this verse so many times, but if you look at the effects, these two qualities, upholding the amana and upholding justice. Just imagine a person with these two qualities. A person who fully manifested, personified these two qualities. You would want to be their best friend. You would want to be their neighbor. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ was for the people, the mushrikeen, even in Jahiliyyah, right? This is why they used to call him Al-Amin. Right? From Aman. Same root word, right? Because he was the one with whom even the mushrikeen would leave their things, they knew that they could trust him. This they had the dispute about who's going to put the boulder in the Kaaba. This is what happened in Jahiliyyah before the Kaaba. As soon as they said, okay, whoever's the first person to walk in, he's going to judge between us. When they saw the Prophet, also they were incredibly happy because they knew that he would judge fairly. So Aman being Amin and then judging with justice. How excellent this makes a person. Just these two qualities. Imagine a neighborhood that was like this. Imagine an entire neighborhood. This is like my vision for Castle. You would want everyone who wanted to move into that neighborhood. You know how they have the top 10 hottest places to live in California or whatever? It would be like Castle. And now imagine a community with these characteristics. Right? So this is what Allah subhanahu, this is the vision, this is the command that Allah subhanahu has given us, right? That for us as a community, as an ummah, to adopt these characteristics. Imagine the aman, the security, the barakah that will descend on these people. This is why inna Allah ya'alma ya'alma, that indeed excellent is the counsel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to you. Now, I have to step back into reality. If you look at the list of the most corrupt nations in the world, mashallah, Muslims figure prominently in that list. This is tragic. According to the annual survey, now this I'm quoting is for you to see what the reality is. According to the annual survey by the Berlin-based Transparency International. Now if you know what transparency, we will get to in a minute. Somalia and Afghanistan are perceived to be the most corrupt nations. These are both Muslim nations, right? They make it like to the top of the list, but there's so many other Muslim countries on that list, other than these two. And guess who's perceived to be the world's least corrupt countries? Finland, Denmark, New Zealand. And you notice these are the countries that never go to war either. These are the least corrupt countries. And what do they mean by transparency? How do they define corruption? Abuse of public office for private gain. Just the this should be the definition of Pakistan. Excuse me, I don't mean to offend anyone. But like this is what you think of when you think of certain countries. Our country being no exception. Abuse of public office for private gain. And then they keep voting in the same officials. Don't you know they did this and they were in jail for this 5 years ago? Like, how can one person have bad in the whole country? Electing the same official, it's just 2 or 3 people that get elected over and over again. It's 2 or 3 of them, right? For example, in Pakistan. And you know the 3 I'm talking about. So, abusing public office for private gain and the degree to which corruption is perceived among public officials and politicians. This is what they mean by corruption. This is what we mean by khiyana and aman. Like we mentioned the example of Dawood alayhi salam, that he did not even use the public treasury, the public funds for his personal use. He used to make things out of iron. Remember, it was not made iron, so he used to make things out of iron and gave his livelihood. Once there was a lot of wealth that came into the Khilafah of Umar, and everyone was distributed a certain type of cloth. It was a cloth that had come from outside from one of the conquests. So everyone was given a piece of that cloth. Everyone, it was distributed among the people, evenly, obviously. Now, Umar was a tall man. It is said that when he used to ride his horse, his feet would touch the ground. That's how tall he was. He really stood out. So when he stood to give the khutbah, a man got up and said that, you have distributed one cloth among the people. Why are you wearing 2 cloths? He needed 2 to cover himself. So Abdullah bin Amr, his son, was sitting next to him. He says, he pointed to him, he said, I'm a tall man, this cloth is from my head, it's Abdullah's cloth. So it's not that he took two from himself. It was that portion that was in his household, Abdullah's cloth, that he took so that he could cover himself and be presentable. This is the level of justice. And look at how the people demanded it. This is what we don't have anymore. This is why we re-elect the corrupt officials, because the people are not demanding justice anymore. If Umar was like that, look at the man who asked the question. He himself, the people themselves took it upon themselves personally to uphold justice. They understood the meaning of this ayah. We don't have this anymore. The collective conscious has gone numb. Right? This is the problem today. And another requirement of upholding amana in public office is to give it only to those that are eligible for it. And to abdul amanati ila ahliha. This has many, many meanings. One meaning is ahl, a person who is ahl yani is suitable for that position. Ahl al-Quran, the people of Quran. For example, when we give ijazah to someone, it's not that by the time they reach Surah An-Nisa, they are perfect. When I recite to my shaykh, he corrects me. When my husband recites to his shaykh in the haram, he corrects him. So this is like a spectrum. It's not perfection, it's a process. And there are levels and degrees of refinement that continue throughout a person's life. But when we give ijazah to someone, what are we certifying them with? That they are ahli dhalik. That we have found them, we have perceived them, that they are ahli and they are suitable for this, they have aptitude for this. They can excel in this. They are responsible enough to take upon this responsibility and then inshallah seek to perfect and transmit to the best of their ability. Right? This is what it really serves. It doesn't serve as perfection. There's no concept of perfection and something that can be improved throughout your life, right? So this is what we mean when to give amana or rather to give public office to those qualified who are ahead for it, who are suitable, who are deserving, worthy of it. Once the Prophet ﷺ was giving a khutbah and someone came in the majlis and started asking us an Arab, they were known for to have bad manners. So he just came down, interrupted, and started saying, what is the day judgment? Imagine how rude that is, Like, for example, someone's giving a talk and someone comes in, interrupts and says, so when's the day of judgment? Anyhow, the Prophet did answer. And some of the Sahabas said, oh, he heard it, he didn't like what he asked, he didn't say anything. And then the other said, no, Allah. Anyway, afterwards, the Prophet said, which was actually he did hear, he started asking us, where's the person who was asking the question? So, he said, I asked him about Sa'ad and Sa'ad, right? Where's the question about the day, about the hour? And he said, so look at the answer of the Prophet as to when the day of the day. He said, فَإِذَا دُيَعَتِ الْأَمَانَ فَانْتَظِرِ السَّاعَةِ. When the amana is lost, when the amana is wasted, then wait for the day judgment. Then wait for the hour. And so he said, كيف إضاعتها? How will it be wasted? Duya is the same word for ziyad. Ziyad, right? This is the same word that we have in Urdu. Ziyad in Arabic is duya, it's the same word. So he said, كيف إضاعتها? Right? How is the wasting of that money? What is it considered? So he said, إذا وسد الأمر إلى غير أهله فانتظر الساعة. When people are appointed as leaders and they are not fitting for that position, then wait for that. I don't know an exact picture of our times today, exactly what is going on in our times. And this is something that Bani Israel actually fell into.